Dear listener, close your eyes and let your imagination carry you to a place beyond the clouds, where mountaintops gleam with gold and the air hums with the laughter of gods. This is Olympus, home of the immortals, and today, it shimmers with more joy than usual. A wedding is underway. The mortal hero Peleus is marrying Thetis, a silver-footed sea nymph whose beauty could make waves forget to crash. In the great hall, tables groan with ambrosia, nectar that tastes like sunlight, and the muses sing so sweetly that even the stars lean in to listen. Zeus, king of the gods, sits on his throne, stroking his beard, while Hera, his queen, smiles, though her eyes stay sharp, as always. All the immortals are here, well, almost all. Suddenly, the doors swing open. In strides Eris, the goddess of discord, her face twisted like a storm cloud. She wasn't invited to the wedding, and oh, is she angry. A party without me, she sneers. Very well. Let's see how long your joy lasts. From her cloak, she pulls a golden apple, bright as a captured sun. On its skin, she's carved 4 words, for the fairest. With a flick of her wrist, she tosses it into the crowd. The apple lands with a soft thud between 3 goddesses. Hera's eyes flash. She is the queen of heaven, after all. Surely this is mine, she says, lifting her chin. But Athena, gray-eyed goddess of wisdom, leans forward. Beauty isn't just about crowns, she says. It's about wit, about courage. And I have plenty of both. Then Aphrodite, the golden goddess of love, laughs, a sound like wind chimes. Oh, my dears, she says, twirling a lock of hair. We all know beauty is my domain. Just look at me. The hall falls silent. Everyone knows a fight is coming. Zeus, ever the peacemaker, when it suits him, clears his throat. This is a matter for mortal eyes, he says. They see beauty more clearly than we do, unclouded by divine pride. And so, the 3 goddesses are sent to earth, to a shepherd boy on Mount Ida. His name is Paris, and he's no ordinary shepherd. He's a prince of Troy, abandoned as a baby because a prophecy said he'd destroy his city. Kind shepherds raised him, and now he tends sheep, singing to himself, unaware of his royal blood. Imagine Paris's surprise when 3 radiant women appear in his meadow. Hera glows with regal power, offering him kingdoms beyond his dreams. Rule the world, she says. Athena promises wisdom and victory in every battle. You'll be a hero, remembered forever. But Aphrodite? She steps closer, her smile warm as summer. I'll give you the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, she whispers. Helen of Sparta. She'll be yours, and your heart will never know sorrow. Paris, young and starry-eyed, can't resist. He hands the apple to Aphrodite. You win, he says. Hera and Athena storm off, their anger like thunder. Troy will pay for this, Hera mutters. And so, the die is cast. Months later, Paris, now revealed as a Trojan prince, sails to Sparta. King Menelaus welcomes him, feasts him, honors the sacred laws of hospitality. But when Menelaus leaves for a funeral, Paris's heart burns with Aphrodite's promise. One night, he slips into Helen's chamber. She's even more beautiful than the goddess described, her hair like honey, her eyes like pools of sunlight. Come with me, he begs. We'll be happy in Troy. Helen hesitates. She loves her daughter, Hermione, but there's something about Paris that makes her feel alive, like a flame rekindled. Aphrodite whispers in her ear, softening her resolve. By dawn, they're sailing away, with chests of Menelaus's gold. When Menelaus returns, his palace is empty. His wife is gone. His treasure stolen. This is more than theft, he roars. This is a betrayal of all that's sacred. His brother, Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, a man with a voice like stone, swears revenge. We'll sail to Troy, he declares. We'll bring Helen back, and burn that city to ash. And so, kings and heroes from across Greece gather. There's Odysseus, clever as a fox, Ajax, strong enough to lift boulders, Achilles, the greatest warrior of all, with a mother who's a sea nymph. 1,000 ships set sail, their sails billowing like storm clouds. But why, you might wonder, did a golden apple lead to war? It wasn't just about beauty, or even Helen. It was about pride, God's pride, king's pride, hero's pride. It was about the belief that one's own desire matters more than peace. The apple was just a spark. The tinder? All the anger, ambition, and stubbornness that lives in gods and mortals alike. As the Greek ships glide toward Troy, the city's walls stand tall, unaware of the storm coming. Priam, Troy's wise old king, sits in his palace, wondering why his son Paris has brought a Spartan queen home. Helen walks the ramparts, her heart heavy. "What have I done?" she whispers. High above, on Olympus, the gods lean forward. Some cheer for Greece, some for Troy. Zeus watches, his face unreadable. He knows this war will last 10 long years. He knows heroes will die, cities will burn, and hearts will break. But that's the way of things, isn't it? Even gods can't stop the consequences of a single, fateful choice. Tonight, though, the ships are still at sea, and Troy sleeps. The stars shine bright, and for a little while, peace hangs in the air, thin as a spider's web, but still there. 10 years. 10 long years of sun and rain, of swords clashing and arrows flying, of hopes rising and falling like the tides. The Greek ships still lie at anchor in the bay, their black hulls bobbing gently, but the men who sail them are no longer the bright-eyed heroes who set out from Greece. Their hair has grayed, their scars have multiplied, and their laughter, once loud enough to scare seagulls, has grown thin, like wind through dry grass. Troy's walls still stand, tall and proud, built by gods in ages past. From the ramparts, the Trojans watch the Greeks with tired eyes. King Priam, his beard white as snow, prays daily to Zeus. "Why won't they leave?" he mutters, staring at the endless lines of enemy tents. His son Hector, Troy's greatest warrior, patrols the walls, his spear in hand, his heart heavy. "We can hold them," he tells anyone who will listen, but even he wonders how much longer they can endure. Let's wander through the Greek camp for a moment. Fires crackle, but the smoke smells of more than wood, it smells of fear. A young soldier, barely older than a boy, polishes his shield, his hands shaking. "Do you think we'll ever go home?" he asks an older warrior. The veteran snorts. "Home? This is home now. Get used to it." Nearby, a group of kings argues. Agamemnon, their leader, pounds his fist on a table. "We'll breach those walls," he growls. "Mark my words." But Odysseus, ever clever, shakes his head. "Not today, brother. Not tomorrow. Troy's too strong." Inside Troy, life goes on, sort of. Women weave cloth, children chase goats in the streets, and bakers knead bread, but everyone jumps at the sound of a shouted order. Helen, once the most desired woman in the world, walks the palace gardens alone. "Is this all my fault?" she whispers to the wind. A servant overhears and shakes her head. "Fault or not, Queen. We're all in this together." Then, disaster strikes. It starts with a cough, a dry, hacking sound that echoes through the Greek camp. At first, no one pays attention. Soldiers get sick, it's part of war. But this cough doesn't go away. Men wake up with fever, their skin burning. Their eyes turn red, their throats swell shut. By morning, some are dead. The plague spreads like wildfire. Tents become death traps. Priests chant prayers, but the gods seem to turn a deaf ear. "It's a curse," the men mutter. "The gods are angry with us." Agamemnon paces his tent, his face dark. "Find out what's wrong," he orders. "Or I'll sacrifice every prophet in this camp." Into this chaos steps Calchas, a seer with eyes that seem to see beyond the living world. He's old, his hair matted, his voice like gravel, but when he speaks, everyone listens. "Gather the army," he says. "I'll tell you why we suffer." The Greeks assemble in the center of the camp, their heads bowed. Calchas stands on a mound, his staff in hand. "The plague comes from Apollo," he says, his voice loud and clear. "The silver-bowed god is angry because Agamemnon has dishonored his priest, Chryses." A murmur runs through the crowd. Chryses, an old man with a face like weathered stone, had come to the camp weeks before, begging for his daughter Chryses. "Please," he'd said, offering gold. "She's all I have." But Agamemnon, drunk on power, had laughed. "Get out," he'd snarled. "The girl stays. She'll weave my clothes and share my bed. That's her fate." Now, Calchas points a gnarled finger at the king. "Return Chryses to her father," he says. "Only then will Apollo lift his curse." Agamemnon's face turns purple with rage. "You dare accuse me?" he roars. "I am your king. I'll do no such thing." But the soldiers shout, "Return her. Save us." Even his closest allies look away. Reluctantly, Agamemnon gives in. "Fine," he snarls. "But I want a prize to replace her. Someone else's treasure. Someone else's honor." His eyes fall on Achilles, the greatest warrior of them all. Achilles sits apart from the others, his golden armor glinting, his expression cold. He's the son of Thetis, a sea nymph, and his strength is almost godlike. "You," Agamemnon says. "I'll take your prize." Briseis. Briseis is a young woman from a conquered town, given to Achilles as a gift for his bravery. She's gentle, kind, and Achilles has grown to care for her, more than he'd ever admit. "You can't," Achilles says, standing up. His voice is low, dangerous. "She's mine, won in battle." "I am king," Agamemnon says. "I can do as I please." That night, Agamemnon's men drag Briseis from Achilles' tent. She cries out, reaching for Achilles, but he can't stop them, not without starting a civil war. "This is betrayal," he growls, his hands shaking. "I'll never fight for you again. Not while breath is in my body." He storms to the shore, where the waves crash against the rocks. "Mother," he shouts. Thetis rises from the sea, her hair like seaweed, her eyes full of sorrow. "What's wrong, my son?" They've dishonored me, Achilles says, his voice breaking. Agamemnon took Briseis. He thinks he can treat me like a dog. Thetis wraps her arms around him. I'll speak to Zeus, she says. He'll make the Trojans win, until the Greeks beg for your help. They'll learn to respect you, my love. Even if it costs them dearly. So, Achilles withdraws to his tent, his spear unused, his anger burning like a slow fire. The Greeks sail Chryseis back to her father, and the plague fades. But a new curse takes its place, the absence of their greatest warrior. Here's a question to think about: why did a plague and a stolen woman matter more than 10 years of war? Because wars aren't just about walls and swords. They're about pride, and loyalty, and the small, human things that make us fight, for honor, for love, for the people we care about. The plague showed the Greeks that even gods can turn against them. Achilles' anger showed them that even heroes have limits. As the days pass, the Greek camp grows quieter. No one jokes around the fires. No one boasts of glory. They all know, without Achilles, Troy might never fall. And somewhere, beyond the walls, Hector smiles. He's heard the news. The tide is turning, he tells his men. Zeus is on our side. The sun sets, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. The Greek ships rock gently, and Troy's walls stand silent. But beneath the calm, a storm is brewing. Achilles' anger is a powder keg, and all it will take is one spark to set it off. The Greek camp feels empty without Achilles. It's not just the absence of his golden armor or his thunderous war cry, it's the absence of hope. Soldiers huddle around fires, their voices low. What do we do now? A young archer asks, polishing his bow. Without him, we're nothing. An older warrior spits into the dirt. We're still Greeks, he says, but his voice lacks conviction. Word reaches Troy quickly: Achilles has withdrawn. The city erupts in quiet celebration. The gods are with us, people whisper. Hector, standing on the walls, stares at the Greek ships. This is our chance, he tells his brother Paris. We must strike hard, before they recover. Paris, still handsome but haunted by the war he started, nods. I'll fight, he says. For Troy. The next morning, the Trojans attack. It's not a raid, but a full-scale assault, chariots thundering, spears flying, war cries echoing off the walls. The Greeks, caught off guard, scramble to form lines. Agamemnon roars orders, but his voice is lost in the chaos. Hold your ground, he shouts, but men are already falling back. Imagine being in the thick of it, dust in your eyes, the clash of bronze on bronze, the scream of a comrade as a spear finds his throat. A Greek soldier named Protesilaus, who was the first to set foot on Troy's shore 10 years ago, fights like a man possessed. He cuts down 3 Trojans before a javelin pierces his chest. For Greece, he gasps, collapsing. Hector leads the charge, his spear dripping with blood. He's everywhere at once, encouraging his men, rallying the faltering, striking down Greek champions. Troy forever, he shouts, and his soldiers roar back. The Greeks, without Achilles to rally them, crumble like dry leaves. Back in his tent, Achilles hears the commotion. He stands at the entrance, his face like stone, watching his countrymen die. Patroclus, his closest friend, tugs at his arm. You must help them, he begs. They're being slaughtered. Achilles shakes him off. Let them learn, he says. Let Agamemnon learn. But the slaughter worsens. The Trojans breach the Greek ramparts, setting fire to tents. Odysseus, ever clever, tries to organize a counterattack, but his spear is shattered by a Trojan stone. Diomedes, the fierce warrior who once wounded a god, takes an arrow to the leg and hobbles away. Even Agamemnon, the proud king, is grazed by a spear, blood soaks his royal cloak. That night, the Greek kings gather in emergency council. Their faces are grim, their hands trembling. We can't go on like this, Nestor, the oldest among them, says. We need Achilles. We must beg him to return. Agamemnon flinches. Beg, he says. I am their king. But the others stare at him, and he sighs. Do it, he mutters. Send emissaries. Offer him anything. So, a delegation sets out for Achilles' tent, Odysseus, Ajax the Great, and Phoenix, an old man who'd helped raise Achilles. They carry gifts, gold, silver, fine cloth, even Briseis, returned unharmed. We come in peace, Odysseus says, bowing his head. The king is sorry. He offers these gifts, and his friendship. Please, fight with us again. Achilles listens, his face unreadable. When Odysseus finishes, he speaks. Gifts mean nothing to me, he says. Not after the way I've been shamed. Agamemnon treated me like a dog. Why should I risk my life for him? Phoenix, tears in his eyes, kneels. Think of your father, he says. He'd want you to fight with honor. But Achilles turns away. I will not fight, he says. Not until Troy is at our gates, and even then, maybe not. The emissaries leave, defeated. Outside, the wind carries the sound of Trojan celebrations. A young Greek soldier, huddled in his tent, writes a letter to his mother. We're losing, he says. I'm scared. I just want to see you again. Here's a question to weigh on your heart. Is pride worth more than loyalty? Achilles was wronged, there's no doubt about that. Agamemnon was greedy and cruel. But as the bodies pile up, as his friends bleed and die, does his anger still make sense? Or does it become something darker, a refusal to forgive, even when lives are at stake? As the days pass, the Trojans push closer to the Greek ships. Hector's brother, Deiphobus, leads a raid that burns 3 ships to the waterline. The Greeks, trapped between the sea and the enemy, whisper of retreat. Maybe we should go home, a soldier says. This war isn't worth it. Achilles, in his tent, plays his lyre. The music is sad, like a funeral song. Patroclus stands in the doorway, watching the smoke rise from the burning ships. They're going to destroy us all, he says. Achilles plucks a string, hard. Let them, he says. But his hands shake. The moon rises, full and bright, casting silver light over the battlefield. Somewhere, a wolf howls. In Troy, Hector prays to Zeus. Give us one more victory, he says. Just one more. In the Greek camp, Agamemnon stares at the stars, wondering if he's destroyed everything he once fought for. And Achilles? He sits alone, his anger slowly turning to something else, regret, maybe, or fear. He thinks of his father, who told him, a hero knows when to fight, and when to let go of his rage. But letting go feels like giving up, and Achilles has never given up on anything. The night is long. And when dawn comes, it brings with it a storm, both in the sky, and in the hearts of men. The sun rises over Troy, but it's not the gentle warmth of summer, it's the harsh, golden light of a day that will be written in blood. The Trojan army gathers outside the city gates, their armor glinting, their spears held high. At their head stands Hector, his chest heaving with quiet resolve. Today, he tells them, we show the Greeks that Troy is not a prize to be taken. We show them that we fight for our homes, our families, our very lives. The Greeks, camped along the shore, stir slowly. They've grown used to skirmishes, to the ebb and flow of battle, but nothing prepares them for what comes next. The Trojans charge like a tidal wave, their war cries shaking the ground. For Troy. For Priam. For Hector, they shout, and the sound is enough to make even the bravest Greek soldier flinch. Imagine being a young Greek boy, barely old enough to hold a shield, watching from the back lines. You've heard stories of Hector, the man who once outfought 3 Greek champions in a single day, but stories don't prepare you for the real thing. He moves like a storm, his spear finding its mark with deadly precision. A Greek knight raises his sword to strike, but Hector ducks, spins, and drives his spear through the man's throat. The boy gasps. This is not just a warrior. This is a force of nature. Hector's strategy is brilliant, simple, hit them where it hurts. The Greek ships are their lifeline, supplies, shelter, the only way home. If the Trojans can burn the ships, the Greeks will be trapped, at Troy's mercy. So he leads his men straight for the shore, cutting through the Greek lines like a knife through butter. Stop them! Agamemnon roars, but his voice is lost in the chaos. His own arm still throbs from the wound he took days before, and his confidence is shattered. He watches, helpless, as Trojan torches arc through the air and land on the dry wood of a Greek ship. Flames burst upward, crackling greedily. No, he cries. Odysseus, ever quick thinking, grabs a shield and runs to the burning ship. Pour water. Throw sand, he shouts, but the fire spreads too fast. Soon, another ship catches, then another. The smoke clouds the sky, turning the sun into a dull, red eye. On the walls of Troy, Queen Hecuba stands with her daughters, her hands clasped. Look, she whispers, pointing to Hector. Our son. He's in the thick of it, his armor splattered with mud and blood, but he never slows. When a Greek soldier lunges at him from behind, Hector spins and breaks the man's arm with a single blow. That's my boy, Hecuba says, tears streaming down her face. Hector's wife, Andromache, watches from a higher tower, her young son Astyanax in her arms. Come back to me, she prays, pressing the baby's face to her chest. She knows war, her father and brothers died fighting the Greeks, and she fears the day she'll see Hector's body carried back to the palace. Please, Zeus, she whispers, spare him. Spare us all. Down on the battlefield, Hector pauses for a moment, catching his breath. He sees Andromache in the tower, her white dress a bright spot against the stone. He raises his hand in a silent greeting. She waves back, her heart in her throat. For a second, the war fades away, there is only husband and wife, separated by walls and swords, but bound by love. Then, a shout pulls him back. Hector! This way! It's his brother Deiphobus, pointing to a gap in the Greek defenses. We can reach the main fleet. Hector nods, tightens his grip on his spear, and charges forward. The Greeks, now desperate, fight back with renewed fury. Ajax the Great, a giant of a man with a shield as big as a door, stands in Hector's path. "You won't pass," he growls. They clash, spear against club, the force of their blows making the ground shake. Ajax swings his club, but Hector ducks, and the weapon smashes into the earth, sending up a cloud of dust. Before Ajax can recover, Hector's spear grazes his thigh. Ajax roars in pain, staggering back. "This isn't over," he snarls. Hector nods. "It never is," he says. By midday, the Trojans have pushed the Greeks back to their last line of defense, a rickety wooden wall they built to protect the ships. Hector stands before it, his men cheering. "One more push," he shouts. And their ships burn. He raises his spear, ready to charge. But then, something strange happens. A wind blows through the camp, carrying the sound of a lyre. Soft, mournful music, like a mother singing to her child. It's coming from Achilles' tent, far from the fighting. Hector pauses. He knows that song. Thetis used to sing it to her son when they were boys, before the war, before everything went wrong. For a heartbeat, he imagines a different world, a world where he and Achilles are not enemies, where they hunt deer together in the mountains, where Troy and Greece trade wine and grain instead of blows. But the moment passes. The lyre falls silent, and the war roars back. Forward! Hector shouts, and the Trojans surge toward the wall. Here's a question to wonder: what makes Hector such a great leader? It's not just his strength, though he's stronger than most. It's not just his courage, though he's brave beyond measure. It's that he fights for something bigger than himself, for his city, his family, the idea that some things are worth dying for. The Greeks fight for glory, for treasure, for revenge. But Hector? He fights for home. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the wall still stands, but it's cracked. The Greeks are exhausted, their numbers thinning. The Trojans, too, are weary, but their eyes shine with hope. Tomorrow, Hector tells them, we finish this. Back in the Greek camp, the kings gather in darkness. The air smells of smoke and defeat. He's too strong, one says. We can't stop him. Agamemnon buries his face in his hands. If only Achilles would fight, he mutters. In his tent, Achilles hears the distant cheers of the Trojans. He closes his eyes, but he can't block out the sound. Patroclus stands beside him, his face tight. You hear that? He says. That's the sound of our people losing. When will you help them? Achilles doesn't answer. He stares at the blade of his sword, its surface smooth as a mirror. In it, he sees his own face, angry, proud, and very, very alone. The moon rises, casting a silver light over the battlefield. Somewhere, a dog barks. A baby cries in the Greek camp. And in Troy, Hector kneels beside his son's cradle, whispering, tomorrow, I'll bring you a gift. A Greek shield, to play with. I promise. But promises, in war, are easily broken. The Greek camp reeks of despair. The Trojans have breached the wooden wall, and smoke from burning ships chokes the air. Soldiers huddle in groups, their weapons discarded, their faces blank. We're done, a veteran mutters. Hector will burn us all. Agamemnon paces, his cloak dragging in the mud, while Odysseus stares at the sea, as if waiting for a miracle. In his tent, Achilles hears the screams. He stands, his hand on his sword, but his feet stay rooted to the floor. "Don't," Patroclus says, placing a hand on his arm. "Not yet. But let me go." Achilles turns, his eyes narrowing. "You," he says. "You'll get yourself killed." Patroclus's voice is steady. "I'll wear your armor. The Trojans will think you're fighting. They'll flee. I'll drive them back, save the ships. Then I'll return." He pauses, his voice softening. "For you. For us." Achilles hesitates. He knows Patroclus is brave, braver than most, but Troy's walls are crawling with warriors, and Hector is like a storm. "Swear you won't chase them," he says. "Swear you'll come back." "I swear," Patroclus says. So, Achilles helps him don the golden armor, the breastplate that shimmers like sunlight, the helmet with its flowing horsehair crest, the shield etched with scenes of gods and men. When he's done, Patroclus looks like Achilles. Not quite, he's slighter, his movements softer, but close enough to fool a crowd. The Myrmidons, Achilles' loyal soldiers, gasp. "Lord Achilles," they shout, but Patroclus shakes his head. "Fight for me," he says. "Fight for Greece." They charge into battle, and the effect is immediate. Achilles is here, the Trojans scream, panicking. "Run!" Warriors who'd stood firm against Hector's rage now scatter like sheep. Patroclus, spear in hand, cuts through them, his borrowed armor glinting. He reaches the burning ships, hacks down the Trojans setting fire to them, and shouts, "Retreat! This is our land now." The Greeks roar, rallying behind him. Even Agamemnon, watching from a distance, grins. "He's back," he says. "The war is ours." But Patroclus, caught in the thrill of victory, forgets his promise. He sees Hector fleeing toward Troy and gives chase. "Come back," a Myrmidon shouts. "Remember your oath." But Patroclus doesn't hear. He's thinking of Achilles' smile when he returns, of the glory they'll share. Hector, hearing the commotion, turns. He sees the golden armor and freezes. "Achilles," he mutters, gripping his spear. But something is off, the warrior's stance, the way he holds his shield. It's not Achilles. Not quite. "Who are you?" Hector calls, but Patroclus doesn't answer. He lunges, spear aimed at Hector's chest. Hector dodges, and the spear embeds itself in the ground. "You're not him," Hector says, realization dawning. "You're a ghost." Their swords clash. Patroclus fights well, he's trained with Achilles for years, but he's no match for Hector, who's been fighting since dawn, his muscles honed by a decade of war. Hector's blade finds a gap in the borrowed armor, slicing Patroclus's thigh. Patroclus stumbles, blood pouring from the wound. "Finish it," he gasps, and Hector raises his sword. But before he can strike, Apollo, who favors Troy, appears, invisible to mortal eyes, and pushes Patroclus forward. Hector's sword plunges into his chest. Patroclus falls, the golden armor clattering. He looks up, and for a moment, he sees Achilles' face in his mind. "I'm sorry," he whispers. Hector stands over him, breathing hard. He yanks off the helmet, and his eyes widen. "Patroclus," he says. "Achilles' friend." He feels a pang of sorrow, this was a brave man, fighting for his friend. But war spares no sorrow. He strips off the golden armor, claiming it as spoils, and turns back to Troy. The Greeks, seeing Patroclus's body, scream. He's dead. Hector killed him. They rush forward, fighting to reclaim the body, but the Trojans hold them off. It takes hours, and dozens of lives, before Ajax the Great finally carries Patroclus back to the camp, his body wrapped in a cloak. Word reaches Achilles' tent. He's sitting, polishing his spear, when a Myrmidon bursts in, sobbing. "Patroclus," he says. He's gone." Achilles freezes. For a long moment, he says nothing. Then, a sound like a wounded animal tears from his throat. He stands, knocking over a table, and runs out of the tent. He finds Patroclus's body lying on a bier, his face pale, his chest still. Achilles falls to his knees, his hands trembling as he touches Patroclus's cold cheek. "You swore," he whispers. "You swore you'd come back." He pulls Patroclus close, rocking back and forth, his tears soaking the cloak. "I'll kill them all," he says, his voice low and dangerous. "Every last one. Starting with Hector." The camp falls silent as Achilles' grief turns to rage. He stands, his eyes blazing, and roars, "Troy will burn." Here's a question that cuts like a blade: why did Patroclus's death change everything? Because he wasn't just a friend. He was Achilles' other half, the part of him that was kind, that cared about more than glory. With Patroclus gone, only the warrior remains, hungry for vengeance. The war, which had been a struggle for honor and pride, becomes something darker, a quest to make Troy pay, no matter the cost. As night falls, Achilles sits beside Patroclus's body, refusing to eat or sleep. Thetis, sensing her son's pain, rises from the sea. "I'm sorry," she says, but Achilles doesn't look up. "I need armor," he says. "Armor fit for a god. I'm going to kill Hector." Thetis nods, knowing there's no stopping him now. "I'll speak to Hephaestus," she says. "He'll forge you armor that even the gods will fear." In Troy, Hector cleans the golden armor, admiring its craftsmanship. "Achilles will come for me," he tells Andromache. She takes his hand, her eyes full of tears. "Don't fight him," she begs. "Stay with me. With our son." Hector smiles sadly. "I can't," he says. "Honor won't let me. But I'll come back. I promise." But promises, in war, are fragile things. The moon rises, casting a silver light over both camps. In the Greek camp, a funeral pyre is built for Patroclus, though it won't be lit until Achilles has his revenge. In Troy, Hector kisses his son goodnight, whispering, "Be brave, little one. Like your mother." And somewhere, in the darkness, the fates spin their threads, weaving a new chapter, one written in blood, in grief, in the terrible glory of a hero scorned. The Greek camp has never known such silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the heavy, breathless hush that follows a great storm. Patroclus's body lies on a bier, wrapped in linen, his face as calm as if he sleeps. Achilles sits beside him, his hands clasped around one cold hand, his eyes red and hollow. For 3 days and 3 nights, he doesn't move. He doesn't eat. He doesn't speak. He just stares, as if his gaze alone could wake his friend. The Myrmidons hover nearby, afraid to disturb him. "Should we speak to him?" a young soldier whispers. An older one shakes his head. "Let him grieve," he says. "Grief is the only thing that will wake him now." On the 4th day, Thetis comes. She rises from the sea, her robes dripping with salt water, her face etched with sorrow. "My son," she says, kneeling beside him. "You cannot stay like this. Patroclus would not want it." Achilles looks up, his voice raw as a wound. "What do I care what he wants," he says. "He's gone. And it's my fault." "No," Thetis says. "It's war's fault. It's Hector's fault. And you will make him pay." She touches his cheek. "I've spoken to Hephaestus. The smith of the gods is forging you new armor, armor fit for a hero who will shake the world." Achilles' eyes flicker. For a moment, there's a spark, a glimmer of the warrior he once was. "When?" he asks. "Tomorrow," Thetis says. "Be ready." When she leaves, Achilles stands. He bends over Patroclus, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "I'll bring you his head," he whispers. "I promise." That night, the camp stirs. Word spreads, Achilles will fight. Soldiers sharpen their swords, mend their shields, and sing old battle songs. Even Agamemnon, who has avoided Achilles like the plague, comes to his tent. "I'm sorry," he says, his voice gruff. "For Briseis. For everything." Achilles doesn't look at him. "Save your apologies," he says. "Just keep your men out of my way." At dawn, the sky splits open. A chariot of fire descends, drawn by two golden lions, and in it stands Hephaestus, his legs twisted but his hands steady. He carries a suit of armor that shines like captured starlight. "For Achilles," he says, setting it down. The armor is a wonder. The breastplate is etched with scenes of gods battling giants, of heroes slaying monsters, of the sea and sky in eternal dance. The helmet, crowned with a plume of fire, makes the wearer look like a god. But the shield, oh, the shield, is the greatest marvel. Hephaestus has hammered into it a tiny world, cities at peace and cities at war, farmers reaping wheat, shepherds watching their flocks, dancers circling a maypole, stars wheeling in the sky. It is life itself, captured in bronze. Achilles lifts the shield, and it fits him as if it were made for his hand. He slips on the breastplate, fastens the greaves, and lowers the helmet over his head. When he stands, the Greeks gasp. This is not the same man who sulked in his tent. This is a force of nature, wrath and grief and power, made flesh. "Myrmidons," he shouts, his voice booming like thunder. "To me." They gather around him, 50 ships worth of warriors, their faces shining. For Patroclus, they roar. For Achilles. As they march toward the battlefield, the ground shakes. Birds take flight, crying in fear. Even the sea seems to roar in approval. The Trojans, watching from their walls, go pale. "It's him," a guard whispers. Achilles. Hector, who has been preparing for battle, grips his spear tighter. "So," he says, "the time has come." Andromache runs to him, her son in her arms. "Don't go," she begs. "Please. I'll lose you both." Hector kisses her, then takes Astyanax in his arms. "Look after him," he says. "Teach him to be brave. To be good." He hands the boy back, turns, and marches out of the gates. The two armies meet in the plain, a sea of bronze and fury. But all eyes are on the two heroes. Achilles, in his divine armor, his shield glowing like a second sun. Hector, in Patroclus's stolen armor, his face set like stone. "Remember me?" Achilles shouts, his voice carrying across the field. Hector nods. "I've been waiting for you," he says. Here's a question to ponder: how does grief change us? For Achilles, it burned away his anger at Agamemnon, his pride, his hesitation. It left only clarity, a single, searing purpose. Grief made him more than a warrior. It made him a weapon, honed to a razor edge. But was this transformation a strength, or a kind of death? The first clash is brutal. Achilles, faster and stronger than any mortal, cuts through the Trojan lines like a scythe. His spear finds a Trojan throat, then another, then another. Blood sprays, men fall, and the Greeks roar. This is for Patroclus. Achilles shouts, and his voice is a battle cry. Hector fights valiantly, but he can see the tide turning. His men, terrified of Achilles, fall back. "Stand firm," he shouts. "For Troy." But they flee, and soon, he is alone, facing the greatest warrior the world has ever known. The sun climbs higher, and the battle rages. But in the end, there is only one question: can Hector survive the wrath of a hero who has nothing left to lose? As the day wears on, the answer becomes clear. Achilles is not fighting for Greece. He is not fighting for glory. He is fighting for the friend he failed. And for that, he will burn the world. The plain of Troy runs red. Not the soft pink of dawn, but the thick, dark red of blood, so much blood that it soaks into the earth, turning the grass black. Achilles moves through the chaos like a storm, his divine armor blazing, his spear a blur of bronze. He is not fighting anymore. He is hunting. Trojans scatter before him, screaming. A young warrior drops his shield and runs, but Achilles hurls his spear, catching him in the back. Another falls to his sword, begging for mercy, but Achilles doesn't listen. Mercy died with Patroclus. "This is for him," he growls, and the words hang in the air like a curse. Imagine being a Trojan boy, barely old enough to hold a spear, watching from behind a rock. You've heard stories of Achilles, the man who fought lions as a child, who could outrun the wind, but nothing prepares you for this. He moves so fast, so silently, that it's like watching a ghost. One moment, your brother is standing beside you, the next, he's on the ground, his eyes wide, his mouth open in a silent scream. You your mouth, tears streaming, and pray he doesn't see you. Achilles' rage is a living thing. It drives him forward, past the broken bodies, past the pleas for mercy, straight toward the heart of Troy. He slaughters without pause, princes and peasants, veterans and boys, all fall to his spear. By midday, the number of dead is so great that the river Scamander, where Trojan children once fished, where women washed clothes, chokes on their bodies. The river god, Scamander, stirs. He has flowed through these plains since the world began, quiet and patient, but even he cannot bear this desecration. His waters, once clear as glass, turn thick and brown with blood and mud. Fish float belly up, on the carnage. Stop, he roars, his voice like rushing water. This is my river. You dishonor it with your slaughter. Achilles looks up, his face splattered with blood, his eyes wild. Who speaks? He shouts. I am Scamander, the river replies, and suddenly, the waters rise. Waves crash against Achilles, knocking him off his feet. He struggles to stand, but the current pulls at him, dragging him toward the depths. You think you can defy a god? Scamander laughs, and the river swells higher, carrying bodies like toys. Achilles fights back, swinging his sword at the water, but it's useless. The river is too strong. Help, he gasps, as the water fills his mouth. Mother! Zeus! High above, on Olympus, the gods watch. Hera, who hates Troy, turns to Hephaestus, the smith god. Save him, she says. He is our champion. Hephaestus nods, and with a wave of his hand, fire erupts on the plain. Flames lick at the river, turning the water to steam. Scamander screams as his waters boil. Stop, he cries. I yield. The fire dies down, the river calms, and Achilles crawls to shore, coughing up water. He looks at his hands, trembling, but still capable of killing. Thank you, he whispers to the sky. But the chaos is just beginning. The gods, unable to stay neutral, take sides. Athena, gray-eyed and fierce, charges Ares, the god of war, who has been aiding Troy. Traitor, she shouts, slamming a boulder into his chest. Ares roars, swinging his spear, but Athena dodges, laughing. You're no match for me, fool. Aphrodite, trying to help Ares, is knocked aside by Athena. Stay out of this, Athena snarls. This is not your fight. Poseidon, god of the sea, clashes with Apollo, who favors Troy. You dare aid these murderers? Poseidon booms, shaking the earth. Apollo replies with a shower of arrows, but Poseidon deflects them with his trident. Zeus, watching from his throne, rubs his temples. Enough, he thunders. This is madness. Let the mortals fight their own war. The gods freeze, shamefaced, and step back. Down on the plain, Achilles stands, his breath coming hard. The river is quiet now, but the air smells of blood and smoke. He looks toward Troy, where the walls still stand, and toward the gates, where he knows Hector waits. Soon, he mutters. Soon. Here's a question that bubbles like the river. Why did a river god fight a mortal? Because even nature has limits. Achilles' rage wasn't just against Troy, it was against the world itself, against the order of things. He thought he could conquer even the elements, but the river reminded him that some forces are older, stronger, than even the greatest hero. He had crossed a line, turning a war into a crime against nature. As the sun dips toward the horizon, Achilles sits on the riverbank, cleaning his sword. The blade is still red, but his hands are steady. He knows what comes next. No more distractions, no more delays. Just him, Hector, and the sword that will settle everything. In Troy, Hector stands on the walls, staring at the blood-soaked plain. He can see Achilles, a tiny figure in golden armor, and his heart grows heavy. Tomorrow, he says to no one. Tomorrow, we end this. His wife, Andromache, brings him a cup of wine. Drink, she says. You'll need your strength. He takes it, but his hand shakes. The moon rises, silver and cold, casting light on the bodies that litter the plain. Somewhere, a mother weeps for her son. Somewhere, a father prays for revenge. And somewhere, a hero sharpens his sword, his heart filled with a rage that will not rest until it has devoured everything in its path. The stage is set. The gods have stepped back. Now, it is just two men, and a fate that cannot be escaped. The walls of Troy tremble, not from the Greek battering rams, but from the weight of fear. Word has spread like wildfire, Achilles is loose, and he kills everything in his path. Women huddle in temples, clutching their children, while old men pace the streets, muttering prayers to Zeus. He's not a man, a blacksmith whispers, hammering a sword blade harder than necessary. He's a monster. On the highest tower, King Priam stands, his eyes fixed on the plain below. He can see the Greek camp, a sea of tents, and beyond it, a single figure in golden armor, Achilles, pacing like a caged lion. "My son," he says, turning to Hecuba, his voice breaking. "Hector must not fight him. He'll die." Hecuba presses a hand to her chest, where her heart beats like a drum. "I'll beg him," she says. "I'll get on my knees. He'll listen." But Hector is already at the Scaean gate, his spear in hand, his men gathered around him. They're not the same soldiers who charged the Greek lines yesterday. Their shoulders are hunched, their eyes darting. "He's here," one says, nodding toward Achilles. "What do we do?" Hector looks at them, and for a moment, he sees himself, not as a hero, but as a boy, chasing his brothers through the palace gardens, his mother calling him for dinner. He thinks of Andromache's face when he told her he would fight, of Astyanax's small hands clinging to his leg. "We fight," he says, but his voice lacks its usual fire. Just then, Hecuba arrives, her robes flying, her hair loose. "Hector," she cries, throwing her arms around him. "Don't do this. Come back inside. Let the walls protect you. Please." Hector gently pushes her away. "Mother," he says. "You know I can't. If I run, what kind of king would I be? What kind of man?" "Alive," she says, tears streaming. "A living man." Priam arrives, too, leaning on his cane, his face ashen. "I've ruled this city for 50 years, he says. "I've seen wars, plagues, famines. But I've never seen a force like Achilles. He doesn't just want to win, Hector. He wants to burn. Let him have Helen. Let him have gold. Just, live." Hector looks at his father, then at the sky, where the sun hangs low, red as blood. "You taught me honor, father," he says. "You taught me that some things are worth dying for. Troy is worth dying for." He turns to his men. "Who will stand with me?" he asks. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then, one by one, they raise their spears. "We will," they say. "For Troy. For Hector." Andromache watches from the tower, Astyanax in her arms. She doesn't cry. She just stands, her back straight, as if her posture alone can protect him. "Go with the gods," she whispers. Hector takes a deep breath, adjusts his helmet, and steps through the gate. The ground seems to hold its breath as he walks toward Achilles, who stands waiting, his shield glowing like a warning. The two heroes stop, 50 paces apart. The plain falls silent. Even the wind stops blowing. "You came," Achilles says, his voice low. "I came," Hector replies. Here's a question that hangs in the air like a spear: what makes a hero choose death? It's not courage, exactly. Courage is fighting when you're scared. This is something else, something quieter, heavier. It's love for a city, for a people, for the idea that honor is more than a word. Hector knows he will lose. But he also knows that some losses are worth taking. Achilles raises his spear. Hector raises his. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Somewhere, a bird sings, as if unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. And then, with a roar that shakes the plain, they charge. The plain holds its breath. The air is thick with the smell of sweat and iron, and the only sounds are the wind whistling through spear points and the ragged breathing of two men who know this is the end. Achilles, in his divine armor, glows like a fallen star, his shield, etched with the whole world, catches the last light of the sun, turning it into a blaze of gold. Hector, in Patroclus's stolen armor, stands like a shadow beside him, his spear trembling not with fear, but with the weight of 1,000 goodbyes. Remember Patroclus? Achilles growls, his voice low enough to rattle bones. He begged for mercy. You gave him none. Hector's jaw tightens. War spares no one, he says. Not even friends. Achilles laughs, a sound like rocks grinding. Then let war take you. He charges first, his spear aimed at Hector's chest. Hector dodges, the point grazing his shoulder, and swings his own spear back. It hits Achilles' shield with a clang that echoes off Troy's walls, but the divine bronze doesn't so much as scratch. Your gods protect you, Hector mutters. Not just gods, Achilles says. Rage. They circle each other, like wolves sizing up their prey. Achilles is faster, stronger, his muscles honed by grief and divine blood. But Hector is clever, he knows the plain like the back of his hand, ducking behind boulders, using the slope of the ground to slow Achilles' charge. Once, he darts behind a stand of olive trees, and when Achilles follows, Hector is gone, only to leap out from behind, spear aimed at Achilles' thigh. But the greaves, forged by Hephaestus, turn the blow aside. Coward! Achilles roars, spinning. Survivor, Hector replies. The Trojans, watching from the walls, cheer when Hector dodges, gasp when Achilles strikes. Fight back, a boy shouts, but his mother pulls him close. He can't, she whispers. On the Greek ships, the soldiers stand silent. Even Agamemnon, who has hated Achilles for so long, feels a flicker of awe. Look at him, he says. He's not human. High above, Athena smirks. She has been waiting for this. Slipping invisibly into the crowd of Trojans, she takes the shape of Deiphobus, Hector's brother, his favorite, the one who always fought at his side. Hector, she calls, her voice perfect. I'm here. Let's take him together. Hector turns, his face lighting up. Deiphobus, he says. I thought you were in the city. Couldn't miss this, Athena says, grinning. Now, strike. Hector nods, his courage renewed. He lunges at Achilles, who is momentarily distracted by the new arrival. For a heartbeat, it looks like he'll land a blow, his spear is inches from Achilles' throat, but then Achilles sees it, Deiphobus's eyes, too bright, too still. Not human. Trick, he snarls, ducking. Hector's spear sails past, embedding itself in the dirt. He turns to Deiphobus, ready to shout for another spear, but Deiphobus is gone, vanished like smoke. No, Hector breathes. He's alone. Achilles doesn't hesitate. He slams into Hector, knocking him off his feet. Hector hits the ground hard, the wind rushing out of him. He fumbles for his sword, but Achilles pins his arm with a boot. This is for Patroclus, Achilles says, raising his spear. Hector looks up, his eyes clear, no fear now, just sadness. I know, he says. But promise me this. Let my father ransom my body. Let them burn me with honor. Please. Achilles' hand wavers. For a second, he sees not an enemy, but a man, a father, a husband, like himself. But then he remembers Patroclus, cold and still, and the moment passes. No, he says. The spear falls. It pierces Hector's throat, clean and quick. He gasps, his fingers clutching at the wound, and then his head falls back. His eyes stay open, staring at the sky, as if he's still trying to understand. The plain erupts. The Greeks roar, throwing their helmets in the air. The Trojans scream, women tearing their hair, men collapsing to their knees. On the walls, Andromache hears the noise and knows. She doesn't scream. She just presses Astyanax's face into her shoulder and whispers, "He's gone, my love. He's gone." Achilles stands over Hector's body, chest heaving. He yanks the spear out, then bends down and strips off the armor that was once his, that Patroclus died wearing. "This is mine," he growls. Then, in a fit of rage, he takes Hector's ankles, ties them to his chariot with leather thongs, and mounts. "Watch," he shouts to the walls. "Watch what happens to your hero." He whips the horses, and they gallop off, dragging Hector's body through the dirt, his head bouncing, his hair tangled with mud and blood. Priam, watching from the tower, collapses. "My son," he wails. "My poor son." Hecuba tears her clothes, throwing herself to the ground. "Curse you, Achilles," she screams. "Curse your name forever." But Achilles doesn't hear. He's too busy, circling the camp, showing off his prize. The Myrmidons cheer, but some look away. This isn't glory. This is cruelty. As night falls, Achilles stops by Patroclus's bier. He looks down at Hector's mangled body, then at his friend's peaceful face. "Is this enough?" he whispers. "Will this make you rest?" The wind blows, but there's no answer. Here's a question that cuts deeper than any spear: why is this victory so hollow? Because Achilles wanted more than Hector's death. He wanted to bring Patroclus back. He wanted to undo the past. But war doesn't work that way. It takes, and when you think you've won, you're left with nothing but blood on your hands and a silence that won't lift. In Troy, the gates are shut. The streets are empty, save for weeping. Andromache sits by the window, staring at the plain, where a dark shape lies in the dirt. "I'll remember you," she says. "Astyanax will remember you. We'll tell stories. You'll never be forgotten." In the Greek camp, Achilles lays Hector's body in the dirt, his own armor glinting in the moonlight. He sits beside it, not celebrating, not sleeping. Just sitting. The stars come out, cold and bright. They've seen this before: heroes rising, heroes falling, the same sad story played out again and again. But for tonight, the story pauses. The war pauses. There is only the quiet of a plain stained with blood, and two men, one dead, one living, bound forever by a fight that changed nothing and everything. The days blur into a haze of grief and rage. Achilles drags Hector's body around Patroclus's burial mound 3 times a day, as if the repetition could ease his pain. But it doesn't. Each time the chariot wheels crunch over the dirt, each time he sees Hector's broken form bouncing behind, a little piece of him dies too. The Myrmidons avoid him, their eyes downcast. Even the gods grow weary of the spectacle. On Olympus, Zeus shakes his head. "This is not right," he says. "Hector was a good man. He deserves honor, even in death." He calls Iris, the rainbow goddess, and sends her to Troy. "Tell Priam," he says, "to come to the Greek camp. Alone. With ransom. Achilles will give him Hector's body. I will protect him." In Troy, Priam sits in his palace, a shadow of a king. His hair has turned white overnight, his hands tremble, and his eyes are empty. When Iris appears, disguised as a servant, he stares at her, uncomprehending. "Zeus says you can ransom Hector," she says. "Go. Now. With gold. Alone." Priam stands, slowly, as if his bones are made of stone. "Alone?" he says. "To the Greek camp? To the man who killed my son?" "Zeus will watch over you," Iris says. He gathers his treasures, gold cups, silver bowls, woven rugs, jewels that sparkle like stars, and loads them onto a wagon. His oldest servant, Idaeus, begs to go with him. "I'm too old to fight," Priam says, "but I'm not too old to grieve. Let me do this alone." But Idaeus insists, and together, they drive the wagon through the dark, past Greek sentries who slumber, enchanted by Zeus. When they reach Achilles' tent, the guards gasp. "It's Priam," one whispers. Achilles is sitting inside, polishing Patroclus's spear, when he hears the commotion. He strides out, his hand on his sword. "What is this?" he snarls. Priam drops to his knees, his head bowed. "I am Priam," he says. "King of Troy. Father of Hector. I have come to buy my son's body." Achilles freezes. He has imagined this moment 100 times, Priam roaring, cursing, threatening war. But this? A king on his knees, his pride cast aside? "I brought gold," Priam says, gesturing to the wagon. "Enough to fill your ships. Take it. Just, give me back my boy." Achilles looks at the old man, his white hair, his trembling hands, and suddenly, he sees his own father, Peleus, growing old alone in Phthia, waiting for a son who may never return. His anger melts, replaced by a sadness so deep it hurts. "Get up," he says, his voice rough. Priam looks up, surprised. "Get up," Achilles repeats. "You are a king. Kings do not kneel to me." He leads Priam into his tent, pours him wine, and they sit in silence. "I had a son," Achilles says, finally. "He would have been your age, now. If I hadn't come to war." Priam nods. "I had 50 sons," he says. "Most are dead. Hector he was the best of them." They talk of fathers and sons, of war and loss, of the cruel irony that two good men must die for a quarrel between kings and gods. When Priam weeps, Achilles hands him a cloth. When Achilles speaks of Patroclus, Priam listens. At dawn, Achilles orders his men to wash Hector's body, to anoint it with oil, to wrap it in clean linen. "Treat him with respect," he says. "He was a hero." He walks to Priam, who stands watching. "Take him," Achilles says. "I give you 12 days of peace. Bury him. Mourn him. Then, we will fight again." Priam clasps his hand. "Thank you," he says. "May the gods bless you." The wagon trundles back to Troy, Hector's body lying gently on a bed of purple cloth. When the gates open, the people fall to their knees, weeping. Andromache throws herself on the body, kissing his cold face. "My love," she cries. "My brave, brave love." For 9 days, the Trojans gather wood, building a pyre as tall as a tower. On the 10th day, they lay Hector's body on it, and Andromache lights the fire. The flames rise, crackling, carrying his spirit to the gods. "Farewell," she whispers. "We will remember you." The Greeks, watching from their camp, stay silent. Even Achilles, standing alone on the shore, feels a tear slide down his cheek. Here's a question that lingers like smoke: why did Achilles spare Priam? Why did he return Hector's body? Because in the end, even the angriest heart recognizes grief. Priam didn't come as a king or an enemy. He came as a father. And Achilles, for all his rage, was still a son. In that tent, they saw each other, not as Greek or Trojan, but as men, bound by the same love, the same loss. As the fire dies, the Trojans collect Hector's ashes, placing them in a golden urn. They bury it beneath a mound of earth, and around it, they plant olive trees, symbols of peace, even in war. The 12 days of peace pass quickly. On the 13th day, the bugles sound. The armies gather. The war resumes. But something has changed. The Greeks fight with less fury. The Trojans fight with less despair. For a moment, they saw each other as human beings. And in that moment, even in war, there is hope. The 12 days of peace end like a sigh. The olive branches laid between the camps are burned, and the bugles sound again, sharp and clear. The Greeks and Trojans line up on the plain, their spears at the ready, but something is different now. The air isn't just thick with anger, it's thick with resignation, as if both sides know the end is near. Achilles fights like a man possessed, but his heart isn't in it. He kills Trojans by the score, but each death feels empty. When he closes his eyes, he sees not Patroclus's smile, but Priam's tears. "What am I doing?" he whispers to the wind, but the wind doesn't answer. The Trojans, too, fight with a quiet fury. They know Hector is gone, but they fight for his memory, for the city he died to protect. Paris, once a laughing prince, now fights with a grim determination. "This is for Hector," he mutters, loosing an arrow that grazes an old Greek warrior's arm. High above, Apollo watches. He has waited long enough. Hector was his favorite, and now, it is time to repay his killer. Slipping down to earth, he takes the shape of a Trojan archer and whispers in Paris's ear. "Aim for his heel," he says. That's where his mother held him when she dipped him in the Styx. That's where he's mortal. Paris nods, his hand steadying his bow. He pulls back the string, his eyes locked on Achilles, who is busy hacking through a group of Trojan soldiers. The arrow flies, swift as a thought, and hits its mark. Achilles freezes. For a moment, he doesn't feel anything. Then, a searing pain shoots up his leg, so intense he drops his sword. "What?" he says, looking down. The arrow is buried in his heel, blood spreading across his greave. He looks up, sees Paris standing there, his bow still in hand, and roars. "Coward," he shouts, limping toward him. But the pain is too much, he stumbles, falling to one knee. The Trojans cheer, but it's a hollow sound. Even they know, killing Achilles like this, with a hidden arrow, is no victory. The Greeks rush to him, lifting him onto a shield. "Hold on," Odysseus says. "We'll get you back to the ships. The healers will fix this." But Achilles shakes his head. He knows. His mother's words echo in his ears, a short life, crowned with glory. He smiles, a little sadly. "It's okay," he says. "I've had my glory." They carry him back to his tent, where the Myrmidons gather, weeping. Achilles calls for Odysseus, for Ajax, for the men who fought beside him. "Bury me with Patroclus," he says. "Side by side. And when the war is over, tell my father I tried to make him proud." His eyes close, and his breathing slows. The last thing he hears is the sound of the sea, the same sea his mother came from, the same sea that will carry his name long after he's gone. When Achilles dies, the Greeks mourn like they've lost a god. His funeral pyre is built from the timbers of 10 ships, and when it's lit, the flames reach the sky, as if the gods themselves are reaching down to claim him. The Myrmidons cut off their hair, throw their armor into the fire, and wail so loudly that even the Trojans fall silent. Thetis rises from the sea, her face streaked with silver tears. She gathers his ashes in a golden urn, the same urn that holds Patroclus's, and buries them beneath a mound of stones. "Rest now, my son," she says. "Your glory will outlive the stars." In Troy, Paris stands on the walls, staring at the smoke from Achilles' pyre. "I did it," he says, but he doesn't feel victorious. Apollo, watching from Olympus, nods. "Hector is avenged," he says, but his voice lacks warmth. "Here's a question to carry with you: was Achilles' glory worth the cost?" He died young, never knowing peace, never seeing his father again. But his name is remembered, his story sung. He chose the short life, the bright one, and in the end, isn't that what heroes do? They burn bright, even if it means burning out. The war goes on. The Greeks still want Helen, still want to sack Troy. The Trojans still want to defend their home. But without Achilles, the Greeks are lost. They argue, they bicker, they forget why they're fighting. Odysseus, ever clever, comes up with a plan, a wooden horse, big enough to hold 30 men, left as a gift for the Trojans. "They'll bring it into the city," he says. "And when night falls, we'll open the gates." The other kings laugh, but they're desperate. "Do it," Agamemnon says. And so, the horse is built. The Greeks sail away, pretending to retreat, leaving the horse on the plain. The Trojans, overjoyed, drag it into the city, celebrating what they think is victory. That night, the Greeks creep out of the horse. They open the gates, and the army pours in. Troy burns. The night Troy burns is a night without stars. Smoke chokes the sky, turning the moon into a dull, blood-red smudge. The streets, once filled with laughter and the clatter of market stalls, now roar with flame. Wooden beams crack, stone walls crumble, and the screams of women and children mix with the clash of swords. This is not war anymore. This is destruction, the slow, greedy kind that eats cities whole. Inside the palace, King Priam clings to his throne, his fingers digging into the carved wood. He has outlived most of his sons, outlived his pride, and now, he will outlive his city. A Greek warrior bursts in, his spear dripping, and Priam raises a trembling hand. "I am your king," he says, but the warrior laughs. "Not anymore," he says, and strikes. Andromache runs through the chaos, Astyanax clutched to her chest. Hector, she whispers, as a beam crashes down beside her. Help us. But Hector is gone, his ashes buried beneath the olive trees. She is captured, her son torn from her arms. A Trojan prince is too dangerous to live, the Greeks say, and dragged toward the ships. She does not scream. She just stares at the burning palace, her heart a stone. Helen stands on the walls, watching. For 10 years, she has been the face that launched 1,000 ships, the cause of it all. Now, she sees the truth, she was never the cause. It was greed. Pride. The gods' cruel games. Menelaus finds her, his face hard, but when he looks into her eyes, he softens. Come home, he says, and she goes, not because she loves him, but because there is nowhere else to go. The Greeks loot and burn, but their victory tastes like ash. They carry away gold and jewels, slaves and silk, but they leave something behind, their innocence. A young soldier, who once dreamed of glory, vomits in the street after watching a child die. Is this what we fought for? He asks, but no one answers. By dawn, Troy is a skeleton. Its walls, built by gods, lie in rubble. Its temples, once filled with prayer, are blackened shells. The only sounds are the crackle of embers and the whimper of survivors hiding in cellars. Odysseus walks through the ruins, his boots crunching on ash. He looks at the wooden horse, now abandoned, its hollow belly gaping like a wound. We won, he says, but he feels no joy. He thinks of his wife, Penelope, waiting for him in Ithaca, and wonders if he will ever be the man she remembers. Agamemnon stands on the shore, watching his ships load. Troy is ours, he says, but his voice is flat. He thinks of Achilles, of Patroclus, of all the men who will never go home. Victory, he realizes, is just a word. Here's a question to linger in the quiet: what remains when a city falls? Not gold, not glory. Memory. The stories mothers tell their children in dark cellars. The way Andromache whispers Hector's name to Astyanax, even when he is gone. The olive tree that grows through the rubble of the palace, its roots tangled with charred beams, a symbol that life outlasts war. Years pass. The Greeks return home, but few find peace. Agamemnon is killed by his wife. Odysseus wanders the sea for 10 years, lost. Helen lives out her days in Sparta, a ghost in her own home. The Trojans who survive scatter. Some sail to Italy, where they build a new city, Rome, they call it, and tell stories of their lost home. Others stay, sifting through the ashes, planting wheat where temples once stood. A generation later, a girl plays in the ruins of Troy. She finds a shard of pottery, painted with a man's face, strong, noble, with a spear in his hand. Who is this? She asks her grandmother, who was a child when the city burned. Hector, the old woman says, smiling. He was our hero. The girl runs off, the shard clutched in her hand, and the grandmother closes her eyes. She hears the past, the clash of swords, the wail of trumpets, the laughter of her youth. But she also hears the present, her granddaughter's laughter, the wind in the olive trees, the quiet promise that memory is stronger than fire. The gods, watching from Olympus, nod. They know this is how it ends, not with a bang, but with a whisper. A story, passed from mouth to mouth, until it becomes legend. So when you lie awake at night, listening to the wind, remember this: cities fall, heroes die, but stories? They live forever. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. Now, as the moon dips low and the world settles into silence, let your eyes grow heavy. Imagine the olive trees of Troy, their leaves rustling like a lullaby. Think of the stories that outlive us all, the ones that wrap around our hearts like a blanket. Good night, dear one. Sleep well, and let the stories carry you. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, and new tales will begin. But for now, rest.